In the spring of 1901, a team of sponge divers plunged beneath the blue depths of the Aegean Sea. What they expected to find were pearls, corals, and perhaps remnants of forgotten shipwrecks. Instead, one diver resurfaced gasping, clutching a corroded lump of bronze tangled among ancient treasures. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a ruined fragment, an object left to decay for millennia. But when fragments were cleaned and pieced together, something extraordinary emerged, a device of gears, precision, and purpose, unlike anything historians believed possible for its time. What was this artifact doing aboard a shipwreck more than 2,000 years old? Who built it, and why? Some call it the world's first computer. Others see it as evidence of knowledge humanity should not have possessed. One thing is certain, the Antikythera Mechanism forces us to ask, what if history is hiding a truth far stranger than we imagined? The story begins in the year 1900, on the turquoise waters surrounding the small Greek island of Antikythera. A storm had forced a group of sponge divers to take shelter near its rocky shores. These men were no strangers to the dangers of the sea, each descent into the deep was a wager against drowning, darkness, and the crushing silence of the ocean. But what awaited them beneath these waters was something beyond their wildest imagination. One diver slipped beneath the waves, weighted down with heavy stones, his copper helmet fogging with each anxious breath. He expected to find sponge colonies clinging to the seabed. Instead, his lantern beam cut across something unnatural, scattered forms that seemed to belong not to the sea, but to a forgotten world. Statues of marble, arms outstretched in eternal stillness, half buried in sand. Bronze figures, once proud, now corroded and broken. Gold ornaments glimmered faintly in the filtered light. But amidst the treasures, there was something stranger still, a lump of green, coral-encrusted metal. At first glance, it seemed worthless compared to the grandeur of the statues and jewelry. It looked like little more than a rock covered in barnacles. And yet, its edges revealed teeth, perfectly cut, interlocking like the gears of a modern machine. When the artifact was hauled to the surface along with the statues and jewels, excitement rippled through the divers and the scholars who would later examine it. This was not merely a shipwreck carrying wealth, it was a time capsule from the ancient world. But while the statues were admired, catalogued, and displayed with great pride, the strange corroded mechanism was set aside, treated as a curiosity rather than a discovery. Why? Was it simply too encrusted to understand? Or was it that the idea of complex technology existing in the ancient world clashed too violently with accepted history? To admit its importance would have been to admit that the ancients may have been far more advanced than scholars dared to believe. Thus, the treasure of Antikythera was split in two, on one side, beauty and art, celebrated as testaments to Greece's cultural legacy. On the other, a rusted enigma, quietly ignored. But history has a way of bringing forgotten things back into the light. What the sponge divers had unknowingly delivered to the surface was not just another relic, it was the first glimpse of a machine that would one day rewrite our understanding of ancient science. And as the mechanism sat in museum storage, gathering dust, it waited patiently for the moment when its true nature would be revealed. History books often paint the ancient world in shades of simplicity. We are told that the Greeks and Romans, despite their brilliance, lived within the boundaries of rudimentary technology, masters of philosophy, art, and politics, yes, but far from the realm of complex machines. Their innovations are described as practical, straightforward, aqueducts carrying water, roads stretching across empires, and amphitheaters echoing with the voices of orators. These marvels impress us, yet they are framed as feats of architecture and engineering that relied more on muscle and ingenuity than on intricate mechanics. This narrative creates a world of clear limits. Ancient sailors, for instance, are imagined to have navigated by stars and coastlines alone, brave but blind compared to modern seafarers. Doctors, though skillful, are thought to have worked without the deeper tools of precision, without microscopes, without mechanisms that could chart the rhythms of the human body. And mathematicians, though celebrated for their theories, are imagined as thinkers without machines to give form to their calculations. In short, our textbooks define this world by what it lacked. Yet cracks appear in this neat timeline when we look closer. There are moments when the ancient world seems to have leapt forward in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Take the sudden perfection of Greek temple architecture, columns carved with uncanny symmetry, as if guided by something more than hand and eye. Or the Roman ability to build concrete harbors that harden underwater, a technology so advanced it was lost for centuries before modern science rediscovered its secret. These flashes of brilliance don't fully align with the idea of a primitive past. They feel like glimpses of something deeper, knowledge half remembered, tools hidden behind the curtain of history. And then there are the myths. Stories whispered through generations of golden ages now forgotten. Legends of Daedalus, who built machines that could fly, and of Archimedes, who crafted war engines so clever they bordered on the magical. Tales that we usually dismiss as exaggerations, metaphors, or the fertile imagination of poets. But what if those myths contained fragments of truth? What if they hinted at technologies that briefly surfaced, only to vanish without explanation? This is where anomalies demand our attention. Ancient batteries discovered in Mesopotamia. Maps that depict coastlines long before modern explorers charted them. Devices described in texts that have no obvious place in the world we think we know. Each anomaly whispers the same unsettling possibility, that the ancients may have possessed more than history admits, and that pieces of this knowledge slipped through the cracks of time. The Antikythera Mechanism is perhaps the sharpest of these cracks. Unlike myths or half-remembered stories, it is not a tale told by poets. It is a real artifact, pulled from the sea, corroded but undeniable. And in its gears lies a truth that does not belong to the official timeline. To see it clearly, we must step beyond the polished image of the Greeks and Romans we have been given, and prepare ourselves to confront an ancient world far stranger, and far more advanced, than we have been taught. It begins with something that hardly looks like history's most enigmatic invention. A corroded lump of bronze, fractured into dozens of pieces, its once polished surfaces now scarred by centuries at the bottom of the sea. And yet, within this decayed fragment lies a design so advanced, it seems to mock our understanding of ancient technology. This is the Antikythera Mechanism, the so-called first computer. When scientists began carefully examining the fragments in the early 20th century, they noticed hints of something extraordinary, tiny inscriptions carved into the bronze, faint gear teeth locked within layers of corrosion. As imaging technology improved, X-rays and CT scans peeled back the centuries of decay to reveal a hidden world of precision. What emerged was a complex arrangement of interlocking gears, 37 in total, engineered with mathematical elegance and mechanical finesse. These weren't rough, hand-cut wheels. Each gear was designed with teeth so exact that they could mesh together seamlessly, transmitting motion across the device with remarkable accuracy. Modern researchers realized the mechanism could calculate astronomical cycles, eclipses of the sun and moon, the movement of the 5 known planets, the irregular dance of the moon's orbit, and even the timing of ancient Greek athletic games. In essence, the mechanism was a compact cosmos, a mechanical universe turning on bronze wheels. The front dial of the mechanism functioned like a star calendar. A pointer swept around a ring marked with the zodiac, tracking the sun's journey through the heavens. Another dial calculated the 19-year metonic cycle, aligning lunar months with solar years. Flip to the back, and you would find spiraling dials predicting eclipses with uncanny precision, even accounting for the color and type of eclipse. The ancient Greeks didn't just build a machine that showed time, they built one that unlocked the patterns of the heavens. But perhaps the most haunting detail is the comparison across eras. Devices of similar complexity, the geared clocks of medieval Europe, did not appear until 1,000 years later. When European craftsmen of the 14th century were proudly constructing their cathedral clock towers, the Greeks of the 2nd century BCE had already built something that, by all rights, should not have existed. It was as if someone had taken the technological achievements of the Renaissance and dropped them into antiquity, centuries before their time. And yet, here it is, corroded but undeniable. Scholars and engineers alike struggle with the same question: how could a civilization that left us marble temples and heroic poetry also create a device that whispers of modern science? Was the mechanism the work of a lone genius whose secrets were lost with him? Or was it part of a broader technological tradition, now erased by the fragility of history? Every turn of its gears forces us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient knowledge. It blurs the line between myth and reality, between what we assumed they could achieve and what they evidently did. A rusted fragment dredged from the sea has become a key to re-evaluating the brilliance of the ancient world. And as we gaze upon this shattered relic, half machine, half mystery, we are left with a question that chills as much as it inspires: how could such a masterpiece exist in 100 BCE, and why did it vanish, leaving no trace of its lineage? For centuries, the Antikythera mechanism has stood as a puzzle with two faces, one carved in the language of science, the other in the whispers of myth. On one hand, scholars see it as proof that the ancient Greeks possessed a mechanical genius far beyond their age. On the other, dreamers and radicals point to something deeper, something unsettling, as though the device might be an echo of forgotten civilizations, or even knowledge gifted from the stars. The academic stance is sober, grounded, and compelling. According to historians, the Greeks of the Hellenistic era were not just philosophers and poets, they were engineers, astronomers, and mathematicians of breathtaking skill. Figures like Archimedes and Hipparchus pushed the boundaries of mathematics and mechanics. To them, the Antikythera mechanism may have been a natural extension of Greek brilliance, a portable cosmos of gears, designed to track eclipses, planetary movements, and Olympic calendars. In this light, it is not a mystery at all, but a testament, evidence that humanity's march toward technology began much earlier than we ever imagined. And yet, the counter-narrative refuses to fade. If the Greeks could craft such intricate machinery 2,000 years ago, why does history show no continuum of equally advanced devices? Why was this level of technology seemingly lost for more than a millennium, only to resurface in the gears of medieval clocks? To some, the absence of a clear lineage suggests something radical, that the Greeks inherited this knowledge rather than invented it. Perhaps fragments of an older, now vanished civilization found their way into Greek hands, preserved like embers from a forgotten fire. Here, myth enters the stage. Legends of Atlantis describe a world where knowledge and technology flourished, only to be swallowed by the sea. Could the Antikythera mechanism be a surviving relic, a shard of Atlantean science passed down in whispers and half-remembered scrolls? Others invoke Prometheus, the titan who stole fire from the gods and delivered it to mankind. Was this device a kind of symbolic fire, knowledge that mankind was not meant to wield too soon? Some push even further, daring to link the mechanism to the stars. Across cultures, myths speak of sky watchers, beings who descended from above and taught humans how to read the heavens. In Sumerian lore, they were the Anunnaki; in Greek tradition, the gods themselves. Could the gears and dials of the Antikythera mechanism be the fingerprints of such ancient visitors? To mainstream science, this idea is fantasy. Yet for those who search in the cracks of history, it is precisely in the gaps and silences that the most tantalizing truths are hidden. Ultimately, the mechanism is a mirror. To scientists, it reflects human ingenuity, a triumph of thought centuries ahead of its time. To mythmakers, it reflects humanity's hunger for connection with the unknown, for stories of lost cities, forbidden knowledge, and whispers from the cosmos. Perhaps the true mystery is not the device itself, but the fact that it can carry both truths at once, the rational and the mythical, the explainable and the inexplicable. And as we step closer, we must ask, who first turned these gears, and what vision of the universe did they hope to unlock? For centuries, history has been presented to us as something solid, carved into stone tablets of certainty. But what if those tablets were fragile, and every new discovery risked shattering them? The Antikythera mechanism stands as one of those shattering discoveries. A device so advanced for its time, it forces us to question everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations. Yet strangely, many historians resist it, not because the evidence is weak, but because the implications are terrifying. Academic conservatism has long been a shield. It protects established narratives, the ones taught in classrooms and printed in textbooks. If the mechanism is acknowledged as a product of ancient Greek engineering, centuries ahead of its supposed time, then the entire timeline of technological progress might need rewriting. To most people, rewriting history is thrilling. To a historian, it is dangerous. Careers, reputations, and authority rest on continuity, not upheaval. It is safer to explain away anomalies than to embrace them. But resistance is not always rooted in arrogance. There is also fear, deep, unspoken fear. Imagine dedicating your life to studying the known past, only to realize that your foundations were incomplete or even wrong. To accept the Antikythera mechanism is to admit that the ancients were not primitive dreamers fumbling toward knowledge but master engineers capable of rivaling, even surpassing, later centuries. That admission demands humility, and humility is a rare currency in the halls of academia. Then there is the question of gatekeeping. Historical narratives are not just academic debates, they are cultural anchors. If we accept that one artifact escaped the sands of time, what else has been lost, hidden, or dismissed? How many other wonders lie buried beneath oceans, deserts, and ruins? The idea is unsettling because it challenges not just scholars but society itself. We crave a neat, linear story of progress, from simple to complex, from ignorant to enlightened. The Antikythera mechanism disrupts that story with a whisper, "You were not the first." And perhaps this is the most haunting truth of all. People do not fear the unknown as much as they fear admitting they were wrong. To rewrite history is to strip away the illusion of certainty, to reveal that human civilization may have risen and fallen many times before. The mechanism is not merely gears and bronze, it is a key to a door most are too afraid to open. Because once that door opens, the past becomes a maze, and the straight line of history dissolves into shadows. The real question, then, is not whether historians resist the truth, but why we all do. Do we fear discovering that ancient civilizations were far more advanced than we ever imagined, or do we fear that their brilliance was forgotten, and that ours might one day be too? History, as it is commonly taught, is supposed to be a straight line of progress. Primitive tools evolve into sophisticated machines, simple societies grow into complex empires, and everything follows a predictable path. But when we look closer, that neat progression begins to unravel. Scattered across the world are strange anomalies, objects that shouldn't exist, technologies that don't fit their time, whispers of knowledge far ahead of their age. Take, for instance, the Baghdad battery. Discovered in Iraq, this clay jar with a copper cylinder and iron rod has baffled scholars for decades. Mainstream historians dismiss it as a simple storage vessel, or at best, an accidental arrangement of parts. Yet, when reconstructed, it generates a small electric current. Could ancient Mesopotamians have stumbled upon electricity nearly 2,000 years before it was officially discovered? If so, what was it used for, plating metals, healing rituals, or something we can't even imagine? Then there is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. At first glance, it looks like any old navigational chart. But closer inspection reveals something astonishing. It accurately depicts parts of South America and even what seems to be the coastline of Antarctica, centuries before it was supposedly discovered, and without the satellites or aerial surveys that modern cartographers rely on. Historians explain this away as copying from older, now lost maps. But that only deepens the mystery: who created the originals, and how did they chart lands they had never seen? Equally enigmatic is Damascus steel, the legendary metal that armed warriors from the Middle Ages. Blades forged with it could slice through lesser swords, bend without breaking, and remain razor-sharp for years. The recipe for creating Damascus steel was lost to history, despite centuries of attempts to replicate it. Modern metallurgists suggest the steel contained carbon nanotubes, a material rediscovered only in the 20th century. If that's true, it implies that medieval blacksmiths were, by some stroke of genius or forgotten inheritance, working with nanotechnology long before science had a name for it. Travel across the ocean, and we find another enigma, the Incan quipus. These intricate knots of string were not just decorative, they were a language of information, capable of recording numbers, data, and possibly even narratives. While some scholars dismiss them as primitive bookkeeping, new research suggests they may have been far more complex, hinting at an entire system of writing woven into fiber. The Incas, a civilization with no alphabet in the traditional sense, may have encoded knowledge in a way so alien to us that we are only beginning to decode its brilliance. Each of these artifacts, when viewed alone, can be explained away as coincidence, misinterpretation, or lost tradition. But together, they begin to form a pattern. A pattern that suggests history might not be the straight, clean line we imagine. Instead, it looks more like a tapestry with missing threads, threads that, if pulled, reveal glimpses of an older, stranger, and more advanced past than we are willing to admit. And that raises the unsettling question: are these anomalies merely cracks in the official story, or are they deliberate omissions, hidden from us to preserve a certain version of history? As we move forward, the mystery deepens. Because the Antikythera mechanism was not just an isolated marvel. It may be one piece of a far larger puzzle. For decades, the Antikythera mechanism sat in fragments, corroded, stubbornly silent, a riddle locked within bronze. Scholars could only guess at its inner workings, sketching crude diagrams and debating endlessly. But then, the 21st century arrived with tools the ancient Greeks could never have imagined: CT scans, X-rays, and 3D modeling. Suddenly, the mechanism was no longer a mute relic, it became a puzzle whose pieces could be virtually lifted, rotated, and reassembled. Researchers slid the corroded slabs of bronze into powerful scanners, peeling away layers of incrustation as though stripping time itself. The results were breathtaking. Hidden inscriptions emerged, tiny Greek letters that had been sealed away for 2 millennia. They spoke of celestial cycles, eclipses, and planetary movements, a manual for the heavens written in metal. What the eye could never have seen, the machine of light and mathematics revealed. Through 3D modeling, scientists began to reconstruct the gears. They traced each tooth, each groove, and each missing fragment until, slowly, the mechanism's true face appeared. What they discovered was staggering: a device of astonishing precision, capable of predicting solar and lunar eclipses, tracking planetary alignments, and even modeling the ancient Olympic Games calendar. It was not just a scientific instrument, it was a bridge between mathematics and mythology, a tool that turned the cosmos into a clockwork of divine order. And yet, for all the wonder, a bitter irony lingered. Why had it taken humanity over 2,000 years, and the most advanced scanning machines, to decipher something that ancient Greek artisans had already mastered with chisels, files, and sheer intellect? The mechanism mocked us gently, as if reminding modern civilization that progress does not always move in a straight line. We pride ourselves on our satellites, our computers, our telescopes, but here was proof that brilliance had burned brightly long before us, only to be buried by history's shifting sands. Each revelation was thrilling, but also unsettling. As researchers watched digital gears turn on glowing screens, they realized they were witnessing not just technology, but philosophy. This was an ancient worldview made mechanical, the belief that the universe could be measured, predicted, and ordered by human hands. And in reviving the mechanism, we were not just decoding history, we were reconnecting with minds that dared to mirror the cosmos in bronze. Modern technology, in its cold precision, had resurrected an ancient dream. The Antikythera mechanism was no longer a corroded relic, it was alive again, ticking in virtual space, whispering the same secrets it once told to philosophers, priests, and sailors who trusted the heavens for guidance. But if modern tools could finally reveal its brilliance, they also forced us to ask a haunting question: what else lies hidden, waiting in the shadows of time, that we still lack the vision to see? For centuries, the Antikythera mechanism has forced scholars to ask uncomfortable questions. The deeper they probe, the more it begins to look less like an isolated artifact, and more like a key to secrets humanity was never meant to forget. And with that realization comes fear. Not just fear of the unknown, but fear of rewriting history itself. One theory dares to suggest that this device was not unique at all, but merely the survivor of a forgotten age of technology. Imagine entire civilizations rising and falling long before Greece or Rome, each reaching pinnacles of knowledge before vanishing into dust. The mechanism, in this view, is no miracle, it is debris from a cycle of brilliance and collapse, proof that human history is not a steady climb upward, but a fragile spiral forever threatened by disaster. If true, then we are not the most advanced humans to walk this earth. We are simply the most recent. Others whisper of lost civilizations, cultures so advanced that their inventions dwarfed what we thought possible. The mechanism, then, could be just one of many, an heirloom from people whose cities now lie hidden beneath oceans or deserts. Atlantis, Lemuria, or some nameless forgotten world. Academics scoff at these myths, yet the device itself forces a haunting question: how could such precision exist in 100 BCE, and then vanish without a trace? A darker suspicion follows, that records of this knowledge did exist, but were deliberately erased. Some claim ancient empires guarded such technology with secrecy, fearing what power it might grant rivals. Others believe the destruction was intentional, libraries burned, scrolls silenced, voices erased. Could the Antikythera mechanism be a lone survivor of knowledge systematically buried? If so, then history as we know it may not be incomplete by accident, but by design. Then there are the truly unsettling theories, the ones academics rarely speak aloud. Some propose the mechanism is evidence of out-of-place artifacts, objects that simply should not exist within their time. Like a shard of modern machinery stranded in antiquity. Did travelers from another age, or another world, leave behind this impossible device? If so, it suggests that humanity's story is entangled with something far greater, and far stranger, than we have been taught to believe. Each of these theories carries a weight that goes beyond curiosity. They threaten the very framework of history. If the mechanism proves the ancients were far more advanced than we allow, then textbooks collapse. If civilizations rose and fell in cycles of forgotten brilliance, then our own future feels fragile, temporary, doomed to repeat the fall. And if suppressed records or out-of-place artifacts are real, then what else is hidden from us, and why? This is why academia hesitates, why the Antikythera mechanism remains wrapped in cautious language and sterile analysis. Because behind its corroded gears lies a possibility that terrifies not only historians, but all of us, that our story is far older, stranger, and more fragile than we dare to believe. And yet, even as theories multiply, one question refuses to die: what else might still be waiting to be discovered? The story begins and ends with a single fragment of corroded bronze. A gear, impossibly precise, unnervingly complex, dragged from the depths of the Aegean Sea over a century ago. To some, it is a marvel of human ingenuity, an ancient machine that testifies to the brilliance of forgotten engineers. To others, it is something far more unsettling, a clue that our timeline of civilization may be built on fragile assumptions, a puzzle piece that refuses to fit neatly into the picture we've drawn of the past. The Antikythera mechanism is more than just a relic. It is a mirror, reflecting both the triumph and the uncertainty of history. Scholars tell us it was a device designed to track the heavens, predicting eclipses, charting celestial cycles, and modeling the dance of planets long before Copernicus dared to imagine a heliocentric universe. Its precision rivals clockwork technology that would not reappear until over 1,000 years later. And yet, there it was, lying in silence beneath the waves, waiting to be rediscovered. But here lies the paradox. If such knowledge existed in ancient Greece, why did it vanish? Why did no lineage of machines follow it? No chain of progress, no libraries of blueprints, no surviving successors. One mechanism, and then, silence. To science, this suggests a fragile chain of transmission, broken by time, wars, and forgotten knowledge. But to mystery seekers, it whispers of something deeper, the possibility that history is not a steady climb forward, but a cycle of rises and falls, of lost golden ages buried under layers of dust. Imagine for a moment the implications. If one artifact can rewrite so much of what we thought we knew, how many others remain unseen? How many lie beneath oceans, deserts, or crumbling ruins? Was the Antikythera mechanism an isolated spark of genius, or evidence of a broader tradition that slipped through the cracks of time? The machine, in its silence, refuses to answer. And so, we are left suspended between two worlds, the world of evidence and the world of speculation. To the rational mind, the mechanism is a triumph of Greek engineering, a once-in-history marvel that we happen to recover. But to the dreamer, the seeker, and the skeptic, it is something far more intoxicating, forbidden proof that our ancestors may have known more than we dare to believe. As you picture that rusted fragment, resting now in a museum case under careful glass, ask yourself, what does it truly represent? A window into the brilliance of a civilization we thought we understood, or a crack in the wall of history itself, hinting at hidden chapters yet unread? Perhaps the greatest power of the Antikythera mechanism is not in what it explains, but in what it refuses to reveal. It forces us to confront the gaps, the silences, the dark spaces where history keeps its secrets. And in those silences, the imagination is free to wander, to lost continents, to forgotten empires, to civilizations erased by time but not by memory. The corroded gear rests, motionless. But in its stillness, it continues to move us, to question, to doubt, to dream. And maybe, just maybe, that is its true purpose.